Okay, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to 5x a ROI, or the return or profit you're making on a PPC campaign. That you're running right now, that you may be actually pretty, a little short on ROI or, achieving the profit margins, whatever that you need on that campaign. And with this technique, the secret siloing technique that I have that we run here at Guaranteed PPC on campaigns, where despite all the different things that we could do to guarantee results on a campaign, we still can't get it. What can be done kind of as a last resort in order to dial in an ROI on a campaign that just simply wasn't there before. And this whole process here, and just the decision to make this video here, was predicated on a very specific campaign where we used this recently that really turned things around. I'm going to explain what kind of market that was, and basically a small case study of that, so you understand how the strategy works on landing page and campaign siloing technique, so you could apply it to your own campaigns if you're a little short on ROI, if that's what problem you have right now. Or of course, if you have the proper ROI on your campaign, you're looking to scale up your ad spend more, this particular strategy can actually help you do it. So this is for you as well. And if of course you haven't started out anything yet or tried very hard on your campaigns, of course you'll know this. Put this right back in your back pocket. You'll be able to have it later on in case you don't have that ROI. So no matter who you are, of course, you're interested in PPC, this is all key stuff that you should and can know about doing PPC. You plan on doing it long term, because PPC, of course, also is a long-term endeavor. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Even if you make money with PPC, you never stop improving. Because things always change with PPC. Google, for instance, also every year usually increases the cost, maybe 5 or 10%, because it's more and more profitable for reasons I won't mention. You got competitors, so on and so forth. If you want to be the top 10 or 20% of your market that makes money with PPC, which when there's 10 or 20 people doing PPC in a certain market, that 10 or 20% make 80% of the money. That's something I could tell you right off the bat. Of those, they don't stop improving. They, first of all, go beyond what other people are willing to do by default, which gets them an advantage. But then when they get there, they don't just sit back and go, I'm done now. No. They have active PPC managers working on the account, not full-time, but non-stop, so they're constantly trying to push the numbers up. And if the ROI is there, they're trying to get more out of their account in terms of increasing spend at the same margins that they had before. So this is just one of the things that's going to be able to do that for you. And even if you're happy right now, you should be potentially thinking about and adding to your campaign as well right now as well. So anyway, on today's video here, I'll go through a list of things that you'll need to know about this strategy, how it works. The very first thing is, the question though, I'll get out right up front, why I was inspired to use this particular technique. And as I said before on the start of this video, there's one specific situation where I had used this technique out, which I knew the technique before this particular case study, where this particular situation where I used this strategy and it really turned things around. Several times before, understood the strategy. Don't usually have to use it too often, but this where it really made the difference. Literally, between campaign wouldn't work, even with our best of the best strategies we're using here, and something that was viable long term. It was in the answering service space. So so that you're clear what this is, there's services out there. If you're running a business, probably know what this is, but for those of you who do not know, that it's actually, if you don't have a secretary, you're not big enough to have a secretary yet, maybe you're a lawyer, you're small, law firm, starting out, there's a service where you can, it doesn't have to be just a one-man show or something like that either, where you don't have a secretary might be 50 grand a year. You don't really want to spend that because you don't have enough calls quite yet. You can hire an answering service that will pretend like they're their secretary. Your virtual secretary, if you will, is another way to put that. If we're some bigger companies, like let's say you run a construction company, you have a lot of calls coming in and out, and you may not be able to answer all the calls. You could have overflow go to them. Of course, if you have a hospital, You could send things to an answering service after hours. There's a lot of different things. So basically, you get the general gist of this, though. So mostly, I'll tell you right off the bat, a lot of the smaller companies that need this, primarily in terms of volume. But there's still a lot of big companies, believe it or not, that also use this as well. So, and they can answer calls, answer emails. They can answer live chats, by the way. So it isn't just related to calls itself, but even though that's the primary purpose of an answering service space, given answering, the first thing you think of is calls, right? So anyway, in this particular space, now here was the issue at hand. People, so the keywords that you use to find one of these companies are synonymous with also people that are using the service want to use to call customer service. They were, like for instance, another keyword that is related to this is like, the plumbing service, plumbing answering service, stuff like that. For the person, well, I won't get into all the specifics on it, but basically the person's trying to call for customer service at a plumbing company or whatever, and because there's lots of plumbing companies nationwide, even if you geo-target your campaign, but there's a lot of plumbing companies in your space, in which this particular company was running nationwide campaigns, so the potential for overflow there was great. That they were getting a lot of calls of people looking for, like, hey, I want to check on the status of my order, basically. And so with that, we had it, and it was a major problem. The keywords you think that would work, like answering service, and we specialized a little bit there, so it was like plumbing, answering services, and also with that, by the way, before it was not a problem. Before about July of 2020, where you could use a keyword that was actually, you could target like answering service firm, which in that case, the person, it's more clear what that person wants. But when Google changed the keyword matching greatly about that time, then if you had answering service firm as a keyword, or plumbing answering service firm, you couldn't just have the ad only show up for that anymore, which like broke the campaign, which started all this. And so you might get like plumbing service after hours answering, something like that, or plumbing customer service answering service, just some general things there. It made the campaigns broad enough, but when basically what happened was, and if you didn't know anything about this, I have another video about this in specific, about how match types have changed recently in 2020, where exact match is not where it was before. It was just the keyword itself. If you had the brackets around it, now it's just close to the keyword, and it broadened up the keyword matching, because at least the way that I do it, a lot of B2B search campaigns, where we're targeting just people searching, and type the keyword itself plus firm, companies, services, where that doesn't work anymore. So in that particular situation, in which I would also agree, in a lot of other B2B service spaces, this is going to be the strategy we have to use. You're going to have to figure out what keywords then can you target, given that you can't be super specific anymore like you would want right off the bat, so that it's going to bring in the least junk. So basically, it's like voting for a politician. What's the worst of the two evils? You got to pick some keywords. Everybody has the same problem. So if nobody can make it work, the rates on the clicks will go down, so Google can still find advertisers, unless your space is dominated by gigantic companies who probably don't care if they make any money, which 90% aren't, of course. There might be some, but not all. And so we had to find which of the keywords, or what are new keywords we could target that will derive the least percentage-wise amount of the crappy searches, people looking for call for customer service, basically. And so you could either use the same keywords and narrow down to the ones statistically that produce the least garbage, or you could use the data of what worked to find new keywords to build off of what worked, which was what we did. So anyway, that's the situation at hand where I'm going to convey how this strategy works and what you could do about it if this is you, and it obviously could be applied to anything. So don't just think this is B2B service-based campaign strategy here, but anything where your ROI might be like a 2-to-1, 200% ROI. You want to get that up to a 10,000% ROI, let's say, and can't figure out any other way to do it. You can use this strategy. Now here is how to actually execute this strategy and what we did for this answering service-based company. So the very first thing you got to do though, which with them we ironically had, because this is something I do on all campaigns pretty much anyway, even if we're doing lead generation, I'm doing offline revenue tracking. So where we're tracking the leads, see if they bought, and if we can't track outright how much they spent, what the contract value is, what is the potential for what is the lifetime value of that projected at for that sale that we made from the leads, and then we're piping that revenue data or predicted revenue data or the lead score, which we're going to score that lead from 1 to 10 into the account so we can see where the best leads came from or where the highest ROI leads and clicks came from. So that's the first thing that you have to do if you're going to do this strategy and unravel this issue you have where you can't really get an ROI, which a lot to do with you, no matter, you're getting too many people who you don't want to come through the campaign. And it may be people with too small budgets, which this will also fix, which is also another big problem, B2B, but also could be in other services as well, people who can't afford your services. So you set up that what is called offline tracking. So you want full tracking, which revenue data is a must. You want to import revenue data. If you can't get revenue data, you import a lead score if you're doing lead tracking. If you're doing e-commerce tracking, well, you would, of course, just do revenue tracking by default. But this is more for lead generation campaigns, so I'll kind of refer to that here. Even though e-commerce, it could be the same thing, technically. So from there, once you have about 6 months worth of data, now you're going to have to bite the bullet a little bit if you haven't had this done. But if you're determined, the thing about PPC is people get so bent out of shape, or they think that, oh, I lost so much money short term, therefore I'm getting out right away. They panic. The people that make it work, they go in with the idea that I don't care what it's going to take, I'm going to make this work. 99% of money what you make is going to come years and years after you've set things up and you've gotten it, you found the key to the system that got it to work for you, because it'll just keep charting out profit after that. So just think of what you're losing up front. It's just a part of the system, just part of the investment in getting it to work. And if it was easy, there would be no opportunity. Everybody in your space would be doing it. You're going to be the one that's going to invest a little bit of money. Just start with a small budget. Know you'll lose money for 3 to 6 months. When it works, you're going to make millions long term because you're the one that's willing to make that investment and stick with it at first. So you set up that revenue tracking, you get some data, probably 3 to 6 months worth of data. Then you're going to go into the search terms report and match the conversion data to your search terms. So the search terms report is a specific report in Google Ads. You're going to go to that, which actually shows what people typed in before they clicked on your ads. And then you can adjust columns, is what it's called. And you could then show the revenue data that you have imported there, or the lead score data. And then that right there is going to tell you the search terms that derived the leads that were worth the damn and what was basically not, right? Out of your whole account, maybe there was 10 to 20% there that was generating 80% of the qualified leads. If you think about it from the standpoint, which you should do, it's not about the search terms per se. But what you're going to do is you're going to take out all the search terms that generated good ROI or good leads. You're going to put them all on a big list, and then you're going to look at it and try to identify what is the similarities between these versus the similarities versus the search terms that did not generate profitable return on business. You could do it at same thing at the keyword level as well. But that is what you'll do as the next step. Now with that, so you'll group the keywords with their common phrases. Once you've done that, if you can't tell right away just by looking at the the bad versus the good list in terms of search terms, and as well as you could do it at the keyword level. You can also see revenue per keyword. You're going to try to do your best to group it together based upon commonalities of words. In this particular case, it was, we found you're looking for a diamond in the rough. It was like help desk services, because they also, as a type of answering services support that they offer, it was as a side thing. So we were also targeting those keywords. So we just made the conclusion, if anything with help desk in it as a part of a larger term, statistically, for the most part, generated, if you averaged it all together, an ROI that was acceptable. And then on top of that, ironically, it was the words that had a customer service outsourcing or customer support outsourcing, something like that, where those specifically, if it had those 3 words in it, crammed together in either of those varieties, it also had the acceptable return that we were looking for. So with that, we had our information about now what part of the account can we cut out completely. But more so than that, we took that information, we were able to build out a few extra terms. So at that point, you find out, okay, anything with these 3 words in it, despite everything else that's in that search term that converted and produced a good lead or a good ROI, the similarities are they had all these 3 words in it, which you should be doing here. We go and do keyword research, deep keyword mining, use a thesaurus to find synonyms in terms of what you could put on the back or the front or in the middle. Those 3 words will keep the same, but you're going to find a keyword, in other words, that might be like cheap, and then those 3 words. You know that one is one you can have. Well, then you'll find all the synonyms from the thesaurus for cheap, and then you're going to try to. Once you get all those, you could set up a test campaign in your Google search account. But you're going to all the words that you find, you're going to then test them. You're going to use a permutation generator, which you could find on Google, which will test. You could put in a bunch of phrases, and then it'll test forward and backward and output a list of every, you literally call it permutation to find every possible way that you can rearrange forward, backward on those keywords. But when you have that, given that the commonality from that mega list that you created was those 3 terms that were in there still, you go into set up a test campaign on Google, and you start the campaign, and anything that says low search volume, then you're going to take out. Now you're going to have, after all of that, a expanded list of keywords that still has the properties of what makes a good lead, which has those 3 terms still, but builds upon that information, so that even though that was 20% of what your account spent before, well, now you built it out, so potentially you can now spend the same budget and still target only the things that produce good leads before. So I mentioned here 5 to 10 groups where you want to narrow it down to. I mentioned in a case study with like 3, 5 to 10 groups of all the search terms that you have revenue data on to narrow things down to. You could stick with, basically just with the same keywords that you have and just shut off keywords that don't work. You could take the search terms and then create a new campaign with it and run only that. You could take those search terms in the new campaign, do keyword research and run that. So it's your kind of idea how far you go with it. And obviously you can go the step further with it once it's working later on. So you could start with, just pausing everything, all the keywords that don't fit that general mold at first, get some positive feedback, know that it works, and then go do all the other stuff I just mentioned. But once you have that, so what the other thing that you can do to expand that, given that it's just a small part of your account that now that worked and you've narrowed everything down to. So in addition to finding the other keywords that may work with it, that have those same commonalities in there, the way that I just mentioned, you could then set up a new campaign if that works, which has an ad for every single keyword that you're left with. So the ad says, like cheap help desk support services. Let's say that's the keyword. Well, the ad will actually say cheap help desk support services literally in the ad. The reason why you do that, and this is the same for any campaign that I set up, nobody else is going to be willing to do that. And if you're the searcher and you type that keyword in, what are you going to click on? You're going to click on the ad that tells you exactly what you want. That actually gets you 2 to 3 times the click-through rate than another ad that's just what most people do. 90% of people do will have one ad with like 20 keywords. It may seem arbitrary / ridiculous to do that. I'm telling you right now, it makes a huge difference. So in this particular case, it's huge because you have just a small segment of your account you're now left with. Now, if you take that and make an ad for every one of those keywords, you could replace the spend that you've cut out by having this new ad for every single keyword. You see how I did that and why I did that now? Then on top of that, as the last step, you can have the landing page for each keyword. So this is something I also do when I build campaigns anyway, most of the time. So that whereas you have one ad now, which will take one ad group for every keyword to have one ad for every keyword, you can now have, if you want, a dedicated landing page for every keyword / ad group to add to the mix, which will get you even more response from that small sliver of the account that actually is now performing. And so at that point in time, it could be the landing page that you're using now. It could literally just be you take that page, put a new headline on it that says the keyword right up top or right underneath. That's what I usually do. And for all practical purposes, that should be most people all they have to do. If you aren't using a landing page, I recommend taking a copy of the page you're sending people to and then make a landing page out of it that you can clone over and over again. And then once you've done that, make a copy of the page for every keyword and then replacing the headline with what the user wants originally, which is what they type in and what's on your ad and now what's on your landing page above the fold before they scroll right in the headline. And that's going to get you the most leverage from that small sliver of the account that works. And so you pretty much could take, let's say, at the end of all of this, there might be 15% of the account that you're left with that you know where all the good leads came from. Once you built out a few extra keywords that you know that you aren't targeting before, but go along those same kind of rules that fit the mold of what produced a good lead, the similarities in between them all, and you built it into a new campaign with dedicated ads for every one of those keywords then on top of that, and added a landing page for each one of those keywords on top of that. If you were spending $3,000 a month before, now you're still spending $3,000, but you're only targeting 15% of what worked. So that's how you're going to go from a 2-to-1 ROI to 10-to-1 ROI and literally get 5 times more ROI because you're just using the data in your account now that you set up for yourself through this revenue tracking to set yourself up for that. And so on top of that, extra credit. So use search terms that converted from the top 1 to 2 groups with a thesaurus and test the campaign to max out just these 2 categories. So I touched on this before, but like I said, what I would probably recommend, since you don't really know much about it at first, or maybe you don't believe entirely that this is going to be worth it for you. Shut off the keywords that did not match the formula that seems to all the similarities between all the things that converted at the ROI that you wanted to. You shut off everything that did not. You start there. If that works, build yourself a new campaign that targets each keyword and has a landing page for each one. Once you do that, then you're sitting pretty right at that time. Then that's when you crack out the thesaurus and you really start. So you could do this in stages, like I said before. But the last kind, I think the dedicated ad and dedicated landing page, in other words, is more important than using the thesaurus and try to find all the similarities to the keywords that you've had already in order to find more keywords that have the same similarities as to what produced positive or the right amount of ROI for you. You can do that. A lot of people don't really think about that. And like I mentioned, you could run a test campaign with it to find out which ones apply. Mainly because shutting off the keywords and making a new ad for every keyword and a landing page for each keyword, which you're just changing the headline, That's so easy and straightforward. That's going to work every single time for you. Whereas this thesaurus trick, you could potentially double again whatever you're profiting from what's left. You could double the profit again by using this thesaurus and finding all the branch keywords and running a test campaign to see what's actually eligible to be run and doesn't have a low search volume warning. And then once you find that out, make an ad on a landing page again for each one of those additional terms that you found, so that you can find synonyms, not just, of course, you'll find all those additional terms, and then you'll test forward, backward, in the middle, all that using a permutation generator to find out all of the keywords that would apply. And by the way, and with that, you don't want to run just 2 or 3 keywords in broad match, because you're not going to get the benefit of having 1 ad per keyword. I recommend at this particular stage, it's the last little thing I'll mention here, run it all in exact match and with that, test forward, backward, in the middle, all that stuff. So you can literally, for every single type of search, you can have a dedicated ad, and that's going to get you the maximum click-through rate on just the stuff that works and what's left, so you can still have a high spend, but still only be targeting like the 15% of the account that works. And with that, you may just start with if you do find 5 or 10 groups that in terms of keyword similarities of the keywords that or search terms that worked, start with just the top 1 or 2 groups with the thesaurus technique, and once you do that, you can of course expand from there. The top 1 or 2 most profitable groups. With all that, you have a keyword for every ad group and a landing page for every ad group now. What you're going to do, so that because I said you want to have everything an exact match, if you have the keyword best answering service and then the keyword answering service, you want to have the keyword with answering service and the ad group with answering service to have the negative keyword best, so that the ad group with best answering service, if they search for best answering service, they for sure see the ad you now have dedicated and set up for best answering service versus the ad for answering service. That's called siloing. That's another thing that you can do. And I have a whole video just on campaign siloing as well, if you want some information about how to structure a campaign so that kind of thing can get done, so that you get maximum click-through rate on just the small part of your account that was producing all the ROI that you want, and so that you can still have a high ad spend from just the small part of your account that worked. So anyway, that in a nutshell is the campaign and landing page siloing technique that we use at our firm. When we can't get an ROI from an account any other way, or it's just, we've went through all the gamut of other stuff and just can't get anything else to work, and the client needs a little bit higher ROI, something like that, or we're just stuck, we can't figure out what else to do. This is an easy way to pump up the spend a little bit more and just squeeze a little bit more out of what we have left. If you have any questions about this technique, leave a comment down below. I have a lot of other videos just like this about money-making PPC strategies you can find on this channel. I come out with a video every day. You can find those on this channel and get alerts by subscribing. I would appreciate if you could do that, of course. Leave me a thumbs up. If you go to guaranteedppc.com/blog, I have, if you don't like the overview of like the strategy I gave you here, I have all these strategies that I personally use on our clients' campaigns to guarantee the results, because we have to. They're on that blog, so it gives you step-by-step instructions on how to set up campaigns just like this, as well as the rest of the campaigns we set up there as well. If you like that, I'd appreciate that as well. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope this met your expectations, and I'd like to hear from you if you try this out, how it went for you.